could be the way that people look at someone and they judge them, and they judge them on the outside, and they don't necessarily take the time to get to know that person.
I reckon in the future I see myself as I reckon I'll be successful. People aren't building up people, but kind of cutting them down.
My parents are together. They do have the occasional fight. Oftentimes they have money, and that shows that they think that money can make them happy, but you just got to take the most of what you have. And yeah, pretty happy home.
It seems to be that society is demanding quite a lot of parents and people in general to give a lot of time to their jobs. You know, I mean, I know what that's like just as a teacher, how many hours I can put in a week. And my husband as well, and the hours that he puts in with his job, and it can sometimes be a 7-day week for him. As you would know if you're in that situation, if you don't do those things, then your chances of survival are threatened. Okay? The way they see themselves, the value they put on themselves, often comes from the value that they feel at home.
Dear Alex, this is yet another letter to my own self-contempt. I've definitely gotten smaller. I keep staring at my little hands, wondering how they've gotten me this far, and this doesn't suit me. I'm wearing pink for crying out loud and trying to figure out why it is exactly I don't really want to get out of bed for the rest of my life. How thin girls manage to pay the rent, choose the right job, keep the wrong boy and smile. They're always smiling, and I'm missing too much. This city makes me miss far too much, and people are so silly, leaving their self-esteems at home each day. Can someone please remind me to never get involved again with someone who wasn't raised by my mum and dad? I think when I was about 13, I used the term poet for the first time, but I still think that's really pretentious. So, yeah.
What's in place in the culture, in kids' schools and community spaces that enable young people to feel like participatory members of a democracy? I certainly worry that the kind of commercialism and corporate greed that's right now the dominant discourse, it's the ethos in the culture, interrupts or renders trivial young people's sense of being engaged in a project that's about something bigger than self.
I don't know, I think some things might hold some people back from being successful if their parents or no one gives them enough praise.
What makes me feel valuable is how God actually is inside me.
So it's always judging on appearances, and it's how you appear, not how the person actually is.
Because I'm just starting out, I just shouldn't take things for granted because I still have a lot of my life left, and being young has its advantages and it has its disadvantages.
When I see models in magazines, on posters in shopping centres, I feel that the pressure is on, that we're meant to all look like that, we're meant to all be beautiful and perfect.
Comments from friends when they're like, oh yeah, that's really good, or like if I get a really good mark, they're like, yeah, well done.
And it's all about having the right gear and having the right clothes and looking good, and just the pressures of it all.
I want you to decide as a team what your ranking would be.
I'd say the most challenging force that works, that students and children are dealing with now in terms of building their identity and building an idea of who they are, is a sense that they have to conform. And that's something that's very challenging, that children are being encouraged perhaps into one way of thinking, or encouraged to fit in, and in order to fit in they have to do certain things, or be a certain person, or wear certain clothes, or have certain material possessions.
Yeah, feeling good about yourself and having confidence and just not being depressed.
They will get more out of life and get further on in life if they can be an original person and they can be themselves. They're not always copying everything else.
media is solely responsible for young people's sort of preoccupation with fame. And growing up in Newcastle, that was a bit of a big deal. When I turned 17, I came to the harsh realisation that I was officially too old to be a childhood prodigy. I really had my heart set on that. And with Silverchair, that they were famous and making all this money and doing great, wonderful things when they were 14, and I was about 12 at the time. And that's when it started to kick into gear. I was like, wow, I've got 2 years to get it together. That's going to be hard. And I used to sort of sit down and sort of strategically think about how I could obtain my goals. And I never really got anything done. I just wrote a lot of lists. But you just get caught up in it and you start to just become obsessed with it, and it's not good. Who cares? Eat your own stuff. Wear your own clothes. I don't think you need to be spending that much time with your head in a magazine. They're really bad writers too. Most of well, don't quote me on that, but most of the journos aren't that good. It's bubblegum journalism, I think.
There's an enormous amount of distraction in, modern life. It's not at all postmodern. There's a lot of people work, and this goes back to the economic questions that for many people it's necessary to work longer hours, to have both parents working, to have even more than one job, and so people are stressed. And then there's the kind of consumption, hyper-consumption that we've all gotten ourselves into, where people want more and they want it now, and so they do the things they have to do to get them, and so that's, then you have all the things and they're in themselves distracting. There's always a danger of sort of romanticizing this simple life in Sudan. It wasn't simple at all, but the children didn't have a whole lot of stuff. And they had enormously rich, imaginative, creative social lives. And, you could see kids here that have a room of toys and don't know what to do.
Yeah, the people who don't have as much money, I do feel kind of sorry for them because it's a lot harder to keep up with the fashion in the magazines, and I don't know how they feel. And sometimes, I do feel sorry for them and wish that I could kind of help them out, even though I don't know how, but yeah.
What makes me feel good as a person is just playing around, playing with my friends, talking to them, just letting out what I think needs to get let out, if I have a problem at home.
I know some people in my life that don't feel too good about themselves, and I think that's because in life you really have to feel accepted, and they don't feel accepted because some people don't treat them as well as they could and make them feel not as important.
I feel I'm important because I'm my own individual self. There's no one else like me.
There's a lot of public dollars that used to be spent on education, now spent on building prisons. In this country, white youth seem to use drugs at 5 times the rates of black youth, and yet black youth are imprisoned for drugs at 13 times the rate of white youth. So there's this kind of bifurcation around public dollars and private dollars, and one consequence is the very heavy surveillance of police, educators, standardized testing on youth. So there are segments of youth by race and class who are being raised in a culture to learn that they're actually not, that there's kind of a discourse of disposability about them. That insofar as yesterday's clothing are disposable, so too are poor kids. So with greed has kind of emerged this somebodies are worth taking care of and educating, and somebodies aren't.
And I do feel that there is a lot of importance that needs to be given to to building a child's confidence in themselves, so that they don't feel they have to sort of rely on having things. They don't have to use that as a crutch to get them through life. If they don't have something, that doesn't really, cause them a lot of problems.
Head, are you feeling this ice-cold Arctic weather?
No.
Nowadays, that it's all about me, and the importance of me, and my success, and my development. I think the importance of being a part of a team and developing an understanding of each other as a team. Not that you're all the same, but you all have different gifts, different qualities to give. As you've probably seen today, it's something I'm always trying to build, the idea of teamwork and the fact that everyone's got something different to give.
Okay, you put a shovel, okay. Why do you think that's important?
More people should drive with their car radios off. I reckon one thing that young people we do far too much of, is we surround ourselves with lots and lots of noise all the time. There's always stuff going on. Always, everyone's got a mobile phone. There's always something to do. No one ever really just turns everything off and just does their own thing. For my birthday, my dad hired me this beach house on the coast. And he said, this is your present, and the keys, you stay there for a week by yourself. I went, yeah, cool. Wow. No one calls, there's nothing to do, you're just sort of in your own headspace, going for walks, that sort of thing. I think it's important for refueling, and it's a spiritual thing as well, listening to your body, putting good things into your body. I'm turning the volume down. Having said that, I love driving on the beach with my radio on. It's fun.
People have got to see that we who are wealthy don't need more. At this point, we really can afford to have much greater social equity, social justice, and a sense of empowerment that's shared. And I do think a lot of young people are concerned about these things. I think Seattle and Prague and a couple of other instances have been hopeful signs, but I think it's going to take more organizing.
I love money, and I like to have lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of money. And that's it.
With my sister, it's okay, but with my brother, he gets pretty annoying sometimes. And I have to look after them when my mum and dad's at work.
What makes my friends more vulnerable or just unhappy is when they're getting left out of a little group that's just talking and everything, and they say, "Oh, we don't like you anymore, go away," or when they're getting teased.
Money can make people feel like they've got everything, but oftentimes it's friends that make you feel like you're valuable.
It's encouraging to think that the next generation is not going to just sort of step into into the corporate greed that we've known for such a long time now. That sense that first only money matters, and that the people who make that money and get away with, in some cases, murder, because they're famous and they're stars, can only make a kind of image for young people that conveys a message. I don't think kids are any more naive or simple-minded than adults, but there's plenty of naive and simple-minded adults, who seem to have fallen for all of this. I mean, we can't manage to pay public school teachers in New York City a decent salary, and we have endless amounts of money for sports people.
Australia and the United States are engaged in the same kind of path pathological searching for standards that mostly exclude rather than include. So there are a bunch of high schools in New York City where I've just been doing some work where the typical 9th grade class, we have K through 12, right? And the typical 9th grade class has between 1,200 and 800 youth. And then the senior class, 12th grade, has between 67 and 250. So those are bodies that are vacating or being tossed out. In an economy that's not actually very suitable to dropouts. We've got a fabulous economy for well-educated people, but a terrible economy for poorly educated people.
I think the biggest impact on self-esteem in children is a feeling of not being needed, a feeling of not being valued. That, as you said, could come from being neglected at home, or being left to their own devices, or parents perhaps having less time or inclination to interact with children, less time to give them, sit them in front of the television or the PlayStation and let them get on with it. That sort of ethos is becoming more common, and I think that gives them less interaction with their parents, less feeling of value. I know that the demands on parents nowadays is very strong with work and time that they have. But I still think it's a negative impact on their children's self-esteem if they do not feel that they have an important place at home.
My experience in schools is kids want to attach a ton. They're barnacles. That kind of tough separation thing melts in a minute. I mean, don't give them your home phone number because they're in your life. So it's interesting, we create these big high schools that are filled with alienation, and then you create smaller schools and these kids are there late and hanging out and willing to show you crappy drafts of stuff, and there's a yearning to be vulnerable in a safe space. There is not a yearning to be vulnerable in an unsafe space.
That depends on physical exertion and exhaustion. Okay, so those three things might help you with your final.
It's always the case that the students that are doing fine, their parents come in and we can tell them they're doing fine. But those students that are struggling, it's increasingly difficult to see parents about problems. I think this to me is the biggest sadness, really, because what a child wants and needs more than anything else is to feel that they are accepted, supported by their family.
Modern day parents missing out on what are they getting wrong, which sort of raises the angle that you need a license to have a dog, and that's all very regimented, and it's actually kind of tricky getting a dog, but anyone can have a baby. I think that incomplete people should be rendered infertile or something, I don't know, but I don't know, maybe it should, I don't know if it necessarily has to be harder for people to have babies, but I don't know. That's a hard one, that's really a hard one.
How does being a part of others affect how you feel about yourself? And there I think there's very consistent literature suggesting that young people who feel like members of a community, a church, a school, a family, do better in the world, can be more generous, can be less defensive, can seek help, can give help. And then I think the other way is if you have a life where the culture tells you you're worth nothing, there's no possibility for you, you're not college material. I can't tell you the number of young people I meet who have been told they're not college material. Then I think you define an opposition in another way, which is that you're not what the culture wants from you, and then you're not going to play by the rules of the culture. It's not a surprise that kids who are treated badly become scary adults.
It's really intimidating. Sometimes you look around and you don't feel as if you're up there with the best of them. You're not wearing, the best gear and stuff. You're not looking the prettiest girl or whatever. I think that there's a lot of other pressure from other females as well.
And don't get into trouble, even though it may be fun for a while. In the long run, it may not be.
I think what makes me feel good about myself is when people affirm you or say, oh, you're really doing really well at this or something like that.
The other day, I had lunch with my dad in the city, and he dropped me off at home, and I was getting ready for work. And I thought, this sort of thought occurred to me, I wonder if my dad actually really kind of likes me. Like, like it's one thing to be encouraging of your child and supportive and all the rest, but to sort of put yourself in the position of maybe that wasn't your dad, or you weren't his daughter and you were someone else's daughter or whatever, if you'd actually have anything in common and if you get along and if he'd like you at all or what he'd think of you. Anyway, I wrote this about that. I said, sometimes I can't help but wonder what my daddy thinks of his little girl. Our conversations, my decisions, my attitudes, my moods, the ever-pendulating drive of a youth who, admittedly at times, still thinks that she's just winging it. In end, only to announce that I am all right. And I want to thank you for making me feel that I'll always be all right.
I've done a lot of expert testimony in either all white schools or all boys schools that are going integrated or going co-ed, and in the most perverse of those settings, the schools are entirely premised on who they're not. That's a really troubling configuration of a school. They're not girls, they're not gay, they're not sissies, they're not sassies, they're not skirts, they're not faggots, they're not... It's really different to be in a school where people are connected around who they are and could be and what they could be about that's bigger than who they are. I think in that first one, where you're defined in opposition, I think you're on real fragile grounds. I think those people get sick. I think they split. I think that's the making of drug abuse. I think that's, if you're only defined by who you're not, either internally or externally, I think you're on very shaky ground.
I think it's very important that we're able to be a giving community and we're able to be able to share, whether it's our time, whether it's our money, our experiences, our expertise, that we're able to do that to help somebody else, because there's so many people that need that help. And I think it's a shame if our only focus is on our own personal success.
Andy's a pretty good friend, and he helps me out when I'm in need. And a couple of nights ago he came to my ice hockey final, and I didn't expect anyone to come, but I asked him if he was allowed, so that really boosted our team and me. He's a really good friend. We mostly play together basically the time we'll talk. No matter what people think, we're a heaps good partners. If one of us, if one person's putting one of us down, we'll come and say, yeah, well, stuff like that, and he'll do the same to me if I do it to him. So yeah, we're really good friends.